Welcome to the Executives Lounge, a podcast for leaders who give a ship.
We're your hosts, Dr. Christine Fauner and Dr. Christine Mejanic.
This is where leadership gets real. No scripts, no posturing, just honest conversations that redefine what it means to lead, one story at a time.
Pull up a seat. You're in the lounge. Let's get started.
So on this podcast, listeners, you know we spend a lot of time talking about leadership, not just strategies or frameworks, but the human experience of leadership. The pressure, the responsibility, the joys, the excitements, the cultures that we shape, and the stories that we carry about what it means to perform, succeed, and keep going. Today's conversation, we explore what happens when the pressure of leading starts to collide with the limits of your body. My guest today is Dr. Susan Lovelle, a strategic wellness consultant and the founder of Balanced Performance. Her work sits right at the intersection of science, leadership, and humanity. So, Dr. Susan, I know that was a bit of an intro, but I am just so excited to share your story, and I want to get into it. Welcome to the Executives Lounge.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine.
You know, a lot of what we talk about in this level of leadership. So when you start in leadership, you kind of look at what you don't want to be or you don't want to do, or that horrible boss that made you feel really horrible. And then you move into this space of like, well, as a leader, how would I lead? And what's a better way to lead? And then you get in there and it's hard. I'm just curious, from your perspective and your experience in 2 decades in plastic surgery, what did happen that forced you to rethink this whole structure of how we operate as quote unquote leaders?
Before I get into that story, because it is interesting, I have to say that for years, I never really considered myself a leader, which is really strange. Even being the head of, I was a solo plastic surgeon for 20 plus years, ran my office, ran my OR, exactly. And it never really occurred to me that I was a leader until I had that breaking point. I just accepted I was the person who was doing everything.
Yeah.
At that period of time, I was pretty much always a solo plastic surgeon. But now I had moved from New York City, where I had others. If something happened to me, there were others who could step in for me. But I had moved to Northeast North Carolina, small town, Elizabeth City. If you're not from North Carolina, you probably never heard of it. And I moved there after 9/11. That's a whole nother story. But there, I was the only plastic surgeon for an hour in any direction. That meant if there was anything, so I had my own surgery patients that I would see, during the day, and operations 3, 6, sometimes 8 hours long. And whereas in some, when I was still in New York, I could have another plastic surgeon come in and assist me. Well, down here now I didn't. So I was the only one doing those surgeries.
Gotcha.
So my husband and I had been born and raised in New York City, loved it, but it changed drastically after that. It became someplace we no longer wanted to raise our children. And so we started looking around for a place that would have space for both the plastic surgeon, and he was an ophthalmologist at the time. Well, there aren't many places in the country that need both at the same time. And this just happened to be the place. And so that's where we ended up going. And in some respects, it was wonderful. It was a great place to live. It was quieter, maybe a little too quiet for somebody from New York. And had I not been raising my children, it might not have been so difficult, but I was. And, so I didn't want them to suffer because I chose not to be in a bigger city, which meant that I'm still going to ball games, I'm still going to competitions, I'm driving them around. And so I was literally working 24/7, always pushing myself, always pushing my staff, because to get better and better and better, which we'll get into that part of leadership as well. And eventually my body said it had enough. And I ended up in the intensive care unit 3 times in the space of a year.
Wow.
With blood clots in my legs. That 2 went to my lungs. The 3rd time, I almost didn't make it out of the hospital. And that 3rd time, I learned, but it took me a little bit longer to learn to still care for myself. So I would come out And I would literally have a couch sitting outside my exam rooms because I went back to work and I didn't have enough time or energy to walk back to my office back and forth. I didn't even have
Wow.
that much energy. So
And
just,
you would think
yeah,
that was like, red flags, warning signs,
yeah, yeah.
sirens going off, like, hey, this isn't working. Did you know that, or did you see that at the time, or were you ignoring it, or did you just not see it?
We kind of skipped over my first career, which was ballet. I was a ballerina for 17 years, professionally travel around the world. It's funny because people ask me which was harder, dancing or going to medical school, and I say by far it was the dancing, by far.
Yeah.
Because that's where I first got that the show must go on mentality.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are that you have to have some sort of gift. You know what I'm saying? If I didn't have some gift, it would have been almost impossible. But on top of that, there are a lot of gifted people. And on top of that is all of the effort, all of the workouts and the practices and the rehearsals and just doing something over and over and over again. And I took that with me, as I was saying, the show must go on. I found out after I was dancing, years afterwards, that I had broken toes and had never realized it. It's just my
Wow.
feet hurt. I had to perform. I performed. And it wasn't until I had, something else done later after I had stopped dancing, they were like, oh, did you know that you broke this foot? So that's what I brought with me into plastic surgery. So
Hmm.
even when I was exhausted, even when, I had no more to give, I kept pushing myself until I couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
And it's only until looking back that, when I was sitting in those chairs, it was only not only what was I teaching myself, but what was I teaching my staff? What was I showing my staff? And that's when I realized well, it is leadership. It's just not good leadership.
Good leadership. Right. And I do think there's an aha moment that when we do realize we're leaders, that like, I call it type two fun. Leadership is not like fun. It's not yay. Leadership is type two fun. It takes a lot of work, a lot of challenge to overcome. It takes a lot of intentionality in learning and trying strategies and figuring stuff out. And it's an invitation that at a certain point in your career, when you do realize I am a leader responsible for other people's well-being,
Mm-hmm.
how do you
Mm-hmm.
want your people to feel on Sunday night before they come in to work for you on Monday? I think that's a huge litmus test of how well we are doing and how well we think we're doing as leaders. And it's not easy to figure it out.
Goodness, no, no. And
Mm-mm.
it's funny that you should say that. The Sunday Scaries is that's when I knew it was time for me to leave plastic surgery. Monday morning dread, where I was like, not scary on Sunday, but Monday morning is like, oh, and I had never felt like that for decades, and that's when I knew that it was kind of time to switch from the surgery to what I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. What is it that you do now? What prompted the building of balanced performance, and what is it that you love doing in that workspace?
Oh, love that. Um, well, when I had to make that stop and heal myself, because that third time there was no easy comeback. The first
Right.
two I sort of made it back. That third time I was struggling. And the way that I healed myself, because I tried all the traditional stuff, and I went eventually to a functional medicine provider.
Hmm.
And they did a whole bunch of tests and found out what was going on with me. I had a lot of gut issues. What a surprise with all the stress that I had going, the heart, the brain, the mind, the skin, the gut, everything. That's all interconnected. And when we try to pull it apart, which is what's happened in traditional medicine, everybody's got their specialty, and that's all they see.
Right.
For the world, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so that's what we've taken to there. The way I healed, though, was having it looked at my entire body. What was my sleep like? My hormones, oof, my, my exercise, my nutrition, all of these things together, and that's how I got
Hmm.
myself back. And that's when I said, okay, wow, maybe I can teach this to other people and have other people understand and feel and see that connection between how we feel and what we do and how we perform. What is our productivity like?
So, from your experience working with executives, what is one leadership behavior that these leaders think is motivating, but it's actually damaging the health of their teams?
Oof. Well, other than the show must go on, there's the type where there's a lot of oversight and a lot of the push that you've got to answer emails all the way through, all throughout the night. I think the other big thing that tends to come out is the inability to see the gifts that people have. So when you yourself are stressed, when you're in survival mode, really, I mean, if you're always stressed and you're bringing that into the office, you can't see beyond these blinders. That's what stress does to us. It puts blinders on us. And so you can't see what other people around you are capable of. That's probably the second biggest thing that I see when people are chronically stressed because their vision is so narrow.
You know, I have spent my entire career really trying to impact the culture of organizations to be joyful and healthy and happy and productive. The idea of trying to shift this culture feels overwhelming. It feels impossible. 75% of US employees say that they have high level emotional distress, anxiety, and depression because of work. How do we shift that?
We shifted first by shifting ourselves. As the leaders, we have got to. And that's one of the big things that, one of the sticky points I have about wellness programs. A lot of them you kind of bring and the leaders will put it into their staff and their people who are working for them,
And they don't go.
and
They
they
don't
don't do
show
it.
up.
They don't do it themselves. So what is that doing? Two things. One, they're not getting the benefit, period. And two, everybody below them is looking as like, if it's not important to them, how could it possibly be important to me?
Well, and there's lack of accountability in that, right?
Yeah,
That if I am going to give this to you to help you do things better, like a lot of times it's coming from the top. So if they're not showing up, where's the accountability that anything is going to change?
exactly. And that's why, when I first started going into corporate work, I went, into the wellness area and
Mm-hmm.
looked at it that way. And then I saw, well, we're getting results, but we're not getting the kind of results that I would
Mm-hmm.
expect to see from what we're doing. And then
Right.
I realized it's because, all the
Top's not
people at the
coming.
top,
They're not coming.
they're
Well, and
not coming.
I wonder this too. I say this all the time in the moment I'm on my pedestal, irritated and wanting to shout it from the rooftops, which is most of the people that need to work with me will not, right? Most of the
Exactly.
people that need this work the most will never listen to this
They'll never.
podcast. And so the people that need to work with us the most are typically the ones that are the most resistant with the most power, right?
Exactly.
The advice that I have for people that are in organizations where that's the culture is you're not going to change it. You're going to need to go find an organization that's here, that's in this space where the leaders are showing up.
Indeed came up with it, and they do it each year, the Indeed 100
Mm-hmm.
well-being. And so what they did is they graphed, looking at the companies that are using wellness. And maybe we need to come up with a better name, because
I
wellness
agree.
sounds kind of like, and it's not. It's
Yeah,
really not. Those companies are consistently above the S&P 500. If you can see graphically that you
right.
will have better outcomes when you are taking your employees and yourself and taking their well-being seriously, why would you not do it?
I think a lot of the toxicity in our work culture in the United States, I'll say, can really be boiled down to fear, Like we all are making decisions based on fear. So the doctor in the office who is micromanaging and only letting go with one hand, with one eye on still, there's a fear that somebody's not going to do it as well as you. And if somebody is uncomfortable to say, no, I'm not going to answer emails after 10 o'clock, there's a fear that I'll lose my job, I'll lose security, I won't be able to pay my bills, I'll be homeless. I mean, we're 1.5 paychecks to poverty. I mean, 1.5 paychecks to being homeless. Like that's the average in the United States. It takes 3 weeks to become homeless in the United States. Like when you think about the gravity of the push pull of these fear dynamics, to me, that's that's the definition of toxicity. That if we could actually address the fear in the room safely, can we help take care of each other better?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part that we see a lot, especially in medicine, is well, I did it that way, and that's the way I was trained, and I worked, this many hours and didn't have a rest, so you can do it too. That's definitely in surgery. Never, maybe not in other fields, but in surgery, it
Mhm.
was like I did the calls and then worked all day, so you've got to do it as well. And speaking of culture within the office and how it changes, is like that couch, sitting on the couch to see patients in between. And one day I just looked and I said, this is ridiculous. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And that's when we started changing the culture within the office. I can't do this anymore. I can. And if I'm not going to do it, you're not going to do it either. And we made ourselves a 4-day week. And
Mm.
you know what? People in the rest of the office building were like, "What are they doing? What are they? They're gonna just crash and burn." Thursday evening, we left. All of us had these biggest grins on our faces because we knew we had a clear 3-day weekend. It was the most wonderful thing, and we were more productive because we
Mhm.
had we just felt better. We got everything done and more in those 4 days without rushing, without feeling overwhelmed. And it was like the best thing we could have possibly done. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You talk a lot about um, looking at emotional intelligence through the lens of physiology and your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how does a leader's stress state really impact the culture of the team around them?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, if you think about it, if someone walks in the office and their face is drawn, they're working hard and fast, there's no smile, what happens automatically? Just they don't have to say anything. This is just how they're looking. Automatically, everyone else's fear goes up. They start, the cortisol goes up. They get into that fight or flight. Something's going on. And then if once the words start coming out of the mouth, it's even greater a response. Now, on that person, the leader themselves, as I was mentioning before, when stress hits, it starts in the brain. It turns on all of these hormones. Well, I'm going to the but a lot of us know about cortisol and everything. So that's
Listen, you're talking to your audience here. Most of us are 30 to 50. We're heading in there. I'm full on menopause. You don't have to tell me about the hormone problems.
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So
Well, and
yeah, just
I think for women in particular, when we hit that perimenopause menopause place where hormones start just going wonky in like
mm-hmm.
really new ways, we don't give a flying F anymore. We want things to happen, and we're sick
Right.
of it.
Right.
Like,
So I was saying the cortisol hits all of those things. It hits your gut, then your gut hits your
yeah.
your thyroid, then you don't have energy, you start gaining weight, you're tired at night, but you can't sleep. Your estrogen, your testosterone, all of those things are all connected, like we were talking before. They're
Mhm.
all interconnected, and they all start with being stressed. And
Yeah.
so that's why we need to understand, number one, first of all, admit it, because that's another thing I see a lot of the times. I'll work
Yeah.
with
Name
someone
it. Gotta
and they're
name it
like,
to claim it.
I'm not
Mhm.
stressed. Well,
You
just
sure
because you're
seem
not like
like
this
it.
yet.
Yeah, the I'm fine, we're fine, everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
We need to, that's no, we need to retire that. Nobody's fine.
Nope. Let's just start with the acceptance of the fact that we are stressed.
Yeah.
That in it itself takes a whole lot of that stress off of us immediately.
Yeah.
And then once we do that, then we can start working at those separate points that also impact the stress. Like I said, the sleep. That's another thing. I always ask whenever I'm doing a presentation or
Mhm.
speaking, how many hours should you get every night? Everybody's like, oh, 7 to 9, yeah, yeah. They get that right. Then you ask them, how many hours do you actually get every night? Oh, 5,
Right. Maybe
you know,
four if I have young
maybe
kids
four
at
or
home.
five. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, where's that disconnect? And just helping people to
Mhm.
see the disconnect between what they're doing and what they know they should be doing.
Mhm.
Like
Here's a fun fact I learned the other day is for women in particular, they did this study in Sweden where they these women were exhausted all the time, right? Like we're all exhausted all the time. And so they did this study where they're like, well, let's give these women 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night and see if we can fix it, right? And they were still waking up exhausted. And what they found in the brain scans was that our brains were still running a mile a minute. We were still making the lists, checking them twice, making the dinner plans, making sure that this person's heading off to soccer at the right time, making sure the doctor appointments are made. Like our brains were still in high function mode no matter what. And so what they found in this study is that in order to remove the fatigue, you had to actually take care of the executive function of your mentality, of your brain.
and that's why I love lab work. I love
Mm,
looking at things like that. And one of the things I look at are the urinary hormones, just because they're easier to measure. And you just look at what they're doing throughout the night. And a lot of times people are going to bed and their cortisol levels are sky high, which
mm,
means that even if they are asleep, like you're saying, they are not going to be sleeping well. So those
right.
are the kind of things that you see on paper and you can do something about.
So, if a job, I kind of want to close this out with this thought because there are a lot of people that don't have the luxury to do what you and I did yet, to
Mm-hmm.
quit our jobs and do what we love, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you and I are in a luxury place of having worked our asses off to get to a place where I could take that risk.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious for those that are feeling the anxiety of being trapped or stuck or in a toxic work environment or know that this stress is literally killing them little by little. How do we face that with resilience, knowing our work environments are negatively impacting our health?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ooh, wonderful question. Well, the first thing, as we talked about before, is acknowledging it,
Mm,
acknowledging that that's one of the issues. And then what I like to say is if you cannot get out of the situation at this point, then start building time in for yourself. So non-negotiable bookends: morning, first waking up, evening, going to sleep. You are bringing your whole stress system down, whether it's meditation or prayer or mindfulness. No matter what it is that makes you feel better, getting outside and breathing, just do something. 5 minutes morning and evening, doesn't have to be hours and hours. That automatically puts you in a different state. And then throughout the day, especially when you feel stressors coming on or something's coming, do a little pre-game breathing or stretching or something, again, that is going to bring down that level of stress. And if you do that throughout your day, the whole response of the body is brought back down as well.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now you're just making me think too about how, so, we say we don't have time, we say we're so busy, but it's just 3 to 5 minutes typically
It
can help us
doesn't have to be
regulate and we
long.
forget. And then it helps us get that perspective of you're not stuck, you're not trapped. Like there are ways to navigate your current experience in your current situation to build a plan for improvement or to find a new and better place, right? Like we forget that in the moment of being stressed.
Absolutely. So like if you know you're going into a stressful meeting, take a second or two before you go in to just breathe or tap or do
Mhm.
whatever it is that will bring not your immune system, but your stress levels down.
Which impacts your
Well,
immune
it does
system
immune your system.
positively.
You're right. It does.
Yeah,
It
that's
does.
all interconnected. Dr.
It
Susan, I
is.
super appreciate the time and the expertise that you brought to the table and your story. I'm really glad that you're bringing your work to the world and that you're sharing it with us here. For our listeners, for more information on Dr. Susan's work and how to get involved with her and how to work with her and what conferences she might be presenting at coming up, you can go to her website and check out her information. It's all in the description of this podcast episode. Dr. Susan, thank you for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Thanks for joining us today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe. We're your hosts, Dr. Christine Fauner and Dr. Christine Majonic. You can learn more about us, the Evolving Leader Fellowship, upcoming events, and future episodes at www.evolvingleaderfellowship.com. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Follow along as we redefine leadership one story at a time. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you back at the lounge next time.